Well, good morning, everyone, and happy Thanksgiving. Is everyone doing well? Yeah, we're doing very well. How many ate too much? How many are planning on eating more? That's right. That's right. That's me. Second, third, fourth helpings. It's great to have you with us this morning at the 11 o'clock service. Before we get started, our ushers are here to serve you. If you didn't get a chance to grab a worship guide on the way in, please just let them know. Your next step card is in there if you want to turn that in the Connection Center if you're a first-time guest. Your note sheet is in there as well. If you want to be a Christian and take notes today, you can do that. And then also your giving envelope, if you're going to give here on site. Many of you give online and via text as well, but if you're going to give here on site later in the service, that's in there as well. Before we get started, I always like to look into the camera and welcome all the guys at Riverbend. Guys, we love you. Come on, let's let them wish them a happy Thanksgiving. You guys are awesome. Great to have you part of our family here today. Over the last several weeks, we've been in an annual series that we do here at Connect called The Blessed Life. We are in the final installment of that today. Just really quickly, what we've kind of walked through. We've walked through the process of recognizing that giving is a matter of the heart. It's all about the posture of your heart. We talked about the test that we all take every time resource comes into our lives. We talked about the principle of the first and the power that it has to redeem the rest. Last week we talked about the spirit of mammon. Powerful time last week. If you didn't get a chance to be with us, I recommend you either check that out online or get a copy of it at the Connection Center. Breaking the spirit and having the opportunity to determine what spirit rests on the money that God brings into your life. And then today we conclude with what I believe is really a game changer for all of us, and it is the principle of multiplication. The principle of multiplication. Now, multiplication is a mathematical term. How many math people do we have that just like math? 3 of us today? Okay. How many cannot stand math? You never liked it? Okay. Well, this isn't too complicated, but multiplication is better than addition. Okay? So here's the really good news. We serve a God of multiplication. We serve a God who can multiply. And I've already received several testimonies of God doing that in people's lives as we've been going through this series and as they've been implementing some of the principles that we've been looking at. We've been soaping this week through different portions of the Gospels. If you're not familiar with how the Gospels work, really the same kind of overall big story told from 4 different vantage points as they saw Christ interacting with humanity. And so it's told from different vantage points, but they capture different elements of the story. Just be like if you and I saw something happen, the way that we would tell the story would go through a different filter, through a different perspective. And so we've been soaping through the 4 different vantage points on the same story. This is one of the few. In fact, other than the resurrection of Christ, this is the one miracle that's captured in all 4 of the Gospels. So it's told there in Matthew 14, it's told in Mark 6, it's told in Luke 9, and then it's told in John 6 as well. And so there's a reason it's in all 4. I think it's because it's important for us to know and to be familiar with it. It's a familiar story. It's what we often refer to as the feeding of the 5,000. For many of us, it will be a familiar story. And so we're going to look at different vantage points of that. I hope that you get some new insight to the story today. We're going to start with Luke's account in chapter 9. He says this in verse 12, "When the day began to wear away, the 12 came," referring to the disciples, "and said to him, 'Send the multitude away.'" Now, just a side note there, it's so funny how sometimes we ask God for opportunity and ministry and to be leaders, and then when he actually brings those opportunities to us, we often go, "Hey, could you send those things away from us now? We got enough of that." Send them, that's a whole different message, by the way. "Send the multitude away, that they may go into the surrounding towns and country and lodge and get provisions, for we are in a deserted place here." Verse 13, "But he said to them," Jesus said, "You give them something to eat." And they responded, "Well, we have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish. Unless we go and buy food for all of these people," for there were about 5,000 men. Now, we just want to stop there for just a moment because it's important for you to know that in the Jewish culture, the way they counted crowds, they really were counting families or heads of households, not the total number of people. So when it says there were about 5,000 men, what that really means is there were 5,000 households. During that time, per capita, the average home had 4 to 5 kids. So we can very conservatively say, if we just say each one had 2 kids, we can very conservatively say that there's not just 5,000 people there. When you include kids and spouses, there's more than 20 to 25,000 people here in this crowd, which is a much bigger miracle than, now feeding 5,000 is big in of itself. So multiply it times 4 or 5, and the Bible backs this up as it always does. It never contradicts itself. Matthew, in his account of it, he says this in chapter 14, the number of those who ate was about 5,000 men. And of course, being an accountant, he wanted to make, because he was a counter, he wanted to make sure that we just knew that was not including the women and the children. So this is a much larger deal. Now, how many know this is a miracle of multiplication? Jesus fed that amount of people with a couple fish and 5 loaves. Now back to Luke's account in chapter 9, verse 14 says this. There are about 5,000 men. And then he said to his disciples, make them sit down in groups of 50. And they did so and made them all sit down. Verse 16 then, he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, looking up to heaven, he blessed and broke them and gave them to the disciples to set before the multitude. Finally, in verse 17, the miracle, they all ate and were filled, and 12 baskets of the leftover fragments were taken up by them. This morning, I want to give us 3 simple thoughts, ideas on this principle of multiplication. And I'm going to take this story and try to put it in somewhat of a current day context. We're going to take some creative, artistic expressions with it. We're going to stay true to the text. But I want us, so often we remove ourselves from the story, from the text. We don't put ourselves in the story. And because of that, we read it differently. Because when you put yourself in it, now you read it differently. You experience it differently. So I want all of us to put our imaginations on. Can you turn your imaginations on with me this morning? And we're going to read through this story, because you've got to imagine that Jesus was traveling around. He was having these wonderful meetings. He would bring his entourage with him, these 12 guys, and they got to see Jesus interact with humanity in a way that obviously we didn't. So they tried to capture it in a way that helped us to understand it. He's healing people. He's raising people from the dead. These incredible teachings. And so they've been having these meetings. And so maybe for this one, they do some additional marketing. They do some advertising. And they have the largest crowd they've ever had show up at one of Jesus' services. Now, people are there hanging out on the hill. They're Snapchatting about it. They're going live. They're selfies. Jesus is about to bring it, and they're taking pictures of themselves. It's awesome. It's going to be amazing. Because most theologians believe this was the largest crowd that Jesus spoke to during his ministry here on earth. And we can safely say there are at least 20 to 25,000 people. So that's Bridgestone Arena. Okay, just to give you some context there. And of course, you have wonderful worship, and everything Jesus says is tweetable, and it's incredible, and it's awesome. So now let's walk through this story, and let's put yourself in the story, and let's see if we can glean something from this story. Back to Luke chapter 9, verse 12, and it starts out by saying, when the day began to wear away. So before Jesus has any conversation with his disciples that lead up to the miracle, they make a note to say that the day is wearing away. In other words, towards the end of the day. You've been there all day. So think about this. They bring Jesus in as the special guest speaker. It's amazing. You have the largest crowd you've ever had. 12 o'clock, still speaking. 12:30, still speaking. 1 o'clock, now you've missed the start of the first game. Now you're getting mad. Yeah. And you're thinking, well, he's going to be wrapping up soon. Now I'm getting hungry. Now am I going to get something to eat before I can maybe I can catch the second half. 2 o'clock, still teaching. 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, when the day began to wear away. That's what they're saying. They've been there all day. So you're with your guys. You are one of the disciples. Okay, you're not Judas. You're one of the 11 good ones. Okay, you're one of the disciples. Okay, you're one of the disciples, and you guys go. We got to figure. Let's put a little committee together here. We need a service planning committee now. This is getting way out of hand. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, he won't shut up. And we need to wrap this thing up. What are we going to do? Been out here all day. If I don't eat soon. Now, how many, when you get hungry, when your belly's empty, you're not as nice to everybody? I mean, is anyone else like that? Like, I want to eat now. And if I don't eat now, you're not going to like to be around me. And that's where the disciples are. So here they are. No Chick-fil-A. Of course, they're closed, of course. You know. I don't know. Does anybody, how many know you crave Chick-fil-A more on Sundays than any other day? I promise you. I need to do a research project on that. It just seems like I crave it more than, no Panera, no Krispy Kreme. They're in a deserted place, it says. And if I don't eat, I'm going to die. And so the disciples go, well, no, that's it. That's it. Let's tell Jesus that the people are hungry. They're getting tired. I mean, let's make sure we play on his compassion. He seems to like these people a lot. So let's make sure that we're concerned about the people. Okay, now look what it says in Mark's account in chapter 6. It says this, that when Jesus landed, so before the service started, and he saw this large crowd that had gathered, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And so he began teaching them many things all day long. And the disciples saw the compassion that he had for them, and he said, no, let's tell him that the people, it's the people getting tired and hungry, and I think he'll shut the service down. So you get appointed as the spokesperson. You can put yourself in the story. You're now the spokesperson on behalf of the disciples to Jesus. So imagine this now. You've got to go in front of the people and, excuse me, sorry, Jesus, I'm really sorry. This is wonderful teaching, Jesus. Incredible teaching. In fact, I was just telling the guys, I was thrilled you're doing this entire series in one day. It's amazing. I mean, I was just telling John, I hope you do part 6 and 7 tonight, because I mean, we're so full. I mean, I just feel so full right now. We're full, but we think that the people are getting restless. They're getting tired, and we think they're hungry. So we may want to consider wrapping it up. So you're concerned about the people. Oh, yes, sir. It's the people. We love the people. Now look what Jesus says. Look what Jesus says in verse 13. But he said to them, great, you give them something to eat. Now listen, you put yourself in the story. We read these stories and we go, oh, this is awesome. No. They go to him with this ridiculous need, and they're getting hungry. 20,000 people, Lord, we don't have anything to give them, so maybe we should wrap it up. And he says, you think they're hungry? Well, give them something to eat. I'm sorry? Excuse me? Yeah, you love the people. Go ahead and give them something to eat. You and your little group over there, your little committee, love the people so much. Why don't you give them something to eat? Now, how many know it did not go as you had planned? This is not how you saw this playing out. Now though, you've got to go back to the committee and give a report. You know, because you always got to give a report to the committee on how it went. So you go back to me. What did you tell him? Did you tell him that they were hungry? Yeah, I know I said that. The people are hungry. I told them that. Well, is he going to dismiss the service and wrap it up? No, not exactly. No, it's not what he said. What did he say? He said for us to give them something to eat. What? Look at that. Bridgestone Arena. What? And look what John says in his account. He captures this in chapter 6. Philip said to him, meaning Jesus, said, it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. Now, I don't know, everyone that gets in moments like this, we start to see things through different perspectives and filters. It's amazing what we see when God doesn't answer the way that we thought he was going to answer. We start to see things in a different way. And Philip, what's Philip see? Philip sees the price. You know how expensive that's going to be to feed these folks? I mean, his faith doesn't allow him to believe that it's possible. So here you are with the disciples. What are we going to do? And then Andrew speaks up in the next verse. In verse 8, he says this. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. By the way, he was not usually the one speaking up because he was Peter's brother. Peter was always saying enough for both of them. And Andrew speaks up and he says, there's a young boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. So Andrew sees a little boy walking by and he grabs it. It's a Long John Silver snack pack and he takes it from him and he says, get out of here, go on your way. Now, we assume that the little boy willingly gave his lunch. I mean, nowhere does it say that he came up and goes, here's my lunch, you can use my lunch. No one, it doesn't say that. Andrew saw a boy with his lunch, and I want you to catch this, because sometimes someone else sees something that you have, and you don't even realize it's the miracle that God wants to use for everyone else. Like I just want to encourage you today. You have potential and purpose in you that people are waiting on you to share so that they can experience a miracle. God uses all kinds of people, doesn't he? In fact, he often uses the people that we would have disqualified. Not enough experience, not enough education, you don't have the right degree on the wall. And in this case, God's going to use someone that everyone had overlooked. I mean, the boy wasn't even important enough to include in the original count. Only God could use someone that wasn't even counted in the 5,000 to feed the 20,000. So here's the other thing that I don't want you to miss. The next generation had the lunch. The next generation. The miracle was in the hands of a young person. And I just want to remind all of us that we are committed to investing in the next generation. We need to be coming alongside of them and encouraging them and believing in them. And it's my job to create systems and structures and provide resources so that what's in their hand can become the miracle for everyone else. All right, here's a question. Did the little boy eat his own lunch or the lunch that was made from his lunch? Did he eat the multiplied portion? Let me ask you this. Which one's better? Which one's better? I mean, at some point, he got okay with his lunch being used. So, young person, let me ask you a question. Do you see your gift as something that will provide a life and miracle for others? Or do you see your gift as something that will provide a livelihood for you? That's a good question. I mean, I would just encourage all of us to hold loosely to our lunch. I mean, God might just want to bless it and multiply it and provide a miracle for someone else from it. I mean, it doesn't say it, but the young boy could have been thinking, that was my lunch, by the way. You can thank me. I came prepared. I knew he'd be here all day. I've heard him preach before. I mean, I knew there was something special about my lunch. I was just waiting for them to wake up and recognize the gift that I've been walking around with. I mean, let me just say this. Like, just keep faithfully showing up with your lunch. Like, be consistent and faithful. Don't worry about whether or not people are telling you how great your lunch is and the meal that it could be providing for everyone. Now, on the other side, us older folks need to be looking for a boy with a lunch. We need to be finding some people that we can speak life and encouragement to and putting our arm around them and going, hey, can I protect you from some mistakes? Because I can tell you all the ones that I made. We need to be investing in a relational way with the next generation. And Andrew sees this young boy as a legitimate answer to their dilemma. So Andrew comes over, grabs the Long John Silver snack pack. And of course, not being used to being the one to speak up, Peter's always talking. He initially speaks with so much boldness. Hey, I've got a young boy here with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And then all of a sudden, he looks at the crowd again and he goes, oh my goodness, that's not going to help us at all. But what good is that going to do with this huge crowd? He basically opens up that snack pack and he goes, oh my goodness, he got a 2-meal deal. But he wanted some extra rolls. How many like your extra rolls? You like your carbs? And he got 5 rolls, and Peter probably reached in to grab one and started eating one. And now you got 4.5 rolls, 2 fish. But how many of us, though, can relate to this? You initially see the possibilities. Your faith is increased, that someone catches you at the right moment, and you're believing God for something great. And then we start to look at our reality, we look at the crowd, and we start to listen to the wrong voices, and fear grips our heart, and doubt creeps in. And Andrew goes, oh, that's not going to help us. What good is that going to do? This is all we have. This is all we have. Listen to me. Your miracle is not in what you've lost. Your miracle is in what you have left. And some of us have been complaining and getting frustrated by the things that we've lost, and God wants to use what you're holding in your hand right now. What's left? What's left? This is all we have. This is all we have. Can I just tell you, that's what God wants to use. This is all we have left. That was enough for Jesus. All that I had left was enough for Jesus. Well, this is all we have. And the disciples go, whoa, wait a second. That's it. That's it. Go tell him this is all we have. Go tell Jesus. We couldn't find anything else, and surely he'll dismiss the service. I mean, tell him we've been working, trying to strum something up, and all we could find was this little boy, and this is all, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Now, I want you to think about this with me. I mean, if you've never heard this story before, 20,000 plus people sitting there, and that's all you have, doesn't it make sense that Jesus would shut the service down? I mean, it makes sense. That's all you have. Obviously, send them home. Listen to me. Tithing doesn't make sense. Doing it God's way doesn't always make sense. But it works. Now, for some of us, that's the challenge. We keep trying to make sense of it all, and he's just asking us to be faithful and obedient. It's not going to make sense. Ashley and I get to the end of every year, and it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. So you're the spokesperson, and you have to go back again and interrupt. Jesus, how would you like that job? Excuse me, sir, I'm so sorry. Master, creator of the world, sorry. Sorry, guys. We've been looking for some food, and we've been able to come up with 2 fish, and we have 4.5 rolls now. Thank you, Peter. That's all we have. We don't have anything. That's all you were able to come up with. It's all we have. So I'm thinking we might want to go with the original plan and kind of wrap it up. I think we might need to just kind of wrap it up. Look what Jesus says in verse 14. But he said to them, have them sit down in groups of about 50 each. No, I don't. Maybe you misheard me. No, it's a big crowd. 2 fish and 4.5 rolls. That's all we have. That's all you're. That's all I was able to get. Okay, that's enough. Have them sit in groups of 50. Okay, now you've got to go back to the committee. You got to give a report. Okay, is he going to dismiss the service? He's going to wrap it. Sorry. Nope, it's not what he decided. No. Did you say 5 rolls or 500? No, it's all we got. And it's here that Jesus teaches us these 3 thoughts that I want to share with us, his disciples today, on this principle of multiplication. And here's the first one. There has to be order before it can multiply. There has to be order. So now you've got to tell the people what to do. Now think this through. 20,000 people, no mics, no amplification, Bridgestone Arena, and you're going to 400 groups of 50. That's 20,000 for you guys that are struggling with the math there. It's 20,000. Just trust me. Okay. Now, I don't know how much directing or leading of people you've done, but people don't like to do what you tell them to do. All right, church people for sure. They like to ask questions. Yeah, I need you to sit in groups of 50 groups. Could we do a line instead? I think line's better. I mean, I don't even know this person. I don't want to be in a group with them. Why do we have to do a group? Can we do 25 instead of 50? Jesus said sit down if you want to eat. That's if you want. Listen to me. Sometimes structure precedes the miracle. And we fight it. We think we have a better way. We think our way is faster and more efficient. And Jesus is saying, if you want to eat, sit down. There has to be order before it can multiply. So can I just lovingly say some of us need to be more patient. Trust him. Some of you are getting frustrated, believing for a miracle. Not happening here, Lord. Get on it. I mean, my life's almost over. I'm 23. Let's get on it. Let's go. Hurry up. Let's hurry up. I mean, and bringing order and structure to your life, although you fight it, it's the very thing you need, and it takes time. One of my favorite verses, one of my life verses, Psalm 37, verse 34 says this: don't be impatient for the Lord to act, but keep traveling, here's the phrase, steadily along. Faithful, consistent, steady. I tried that, did that. I did that for 3 months. Didn't work. 90 days, woo, good job. Really consistent. It's awesome. Steadily along, not your path, his path, and look at this, in due season. Now, how many would like to determine what that season looks like, everybody? I have some suggestions, Lord. But if you'll just keep traveling steadily along and being patient, he's going to honor you. I want to live the blessed life, Devin. Okay, be patient. Keep traveling steadily along, and in due season, he will honor you with every blessing. And you'll see the wicked destroyed in your life. Long before Ashley and I ever thought about or knew that we would be pastoring and leading a church, God helped us tremendously by putting people in our lives that helped us understand principles of management of finances. They were gifts to our life, and they walked us through stupid mistakes, and they walked with us when we didn't get counsel and we made inaccurate decisions. And God brought people into our life to help us implement some principles to help us have order. And I know every one of us have our own journey, but I just thought I'd share just a couple of those things for us. You have your own journey, I understand that. But I need you to understand, God cannot bless things that are out of order. God does not bless disorder. The Bible confirms it. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 14. It says this: for God is not a God of disorder, but he's a God of peace. Now, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. God can't go against his very own nature. So be sure that everything is done, here's some recommendation, properly and in order. And so let me just give you a couple things that we've worked on. And these aren't, you guys know these things that I'm getting ready to say for some of you. The first one was just simply just get out of debt. Get out of debt. Now, that means different things to different people, because some things that you're indebted on you don't necessarily consider debt. And so you need to let the Lord lead you and apply it to your own situation. But let me say this. Some of us are trying to live above our means and are making payments on things, depreciating things that are simply too big for us. And so some of us might do well to get out of that payment and sell the car and buy a lesser car for cash. You didn't. No. I mean, we spend the whole year getting out of the hole that we dug, celebrating Jesus' birth. Can I just say that is no way to celebrate Jesus? Like, Jesus would not want you celebrating his birth that way. You say, well, yeah, but what are people going to think if I downgrade and buy a used car? And listen, if you've had that thought, you are under the influence of the spirit of mammon. We talked about that last week. They can't see me driving that car. God cannot bless things that are out of order. It's against his own nature. And what Ashley and I have found with couples, we've sat with hundreds of people, dozens of couples and families whose finances are way out of order. And many times they aren't willing to change their standard of living to get order in their lives. And they're expecting God to bless them. All right, how many want me to move on? Want me to move on to the next one? Okay. Move on to the next one. Here's the other thing that we personally just had to do because we knew God was telling us, and it was just very simply, never manipulate people for money. Never. Just like God can't bless disorder, he cannot bless manipulation. So manipulation in its root word is the same root word for witchcraft. Witchcraft is all about control. Manipulation is all about control. Maybe you have someone in your family that you go, oh yes, we have someone in our family that's trying to always control things. So how does this work out when we go through difficult times? And so here's what we do. We start to drop hints to people, and we expect God to provide by us controlling it. We live disordered lives, mismanaging our finances and our time, unwilling to change our standard of living and do what it takes. We get in dire straits, and we manipulate people, and we make them feel bad for a reality that we created. And then we have the audacity to give God credit for something that we orchestrated, that we never asked for his help on. Can I just say, that wasn't God, that was you preying on people's compassion. So, pure motive, this is what God had, again, God had to do this in us first. Pure motive. And some of us need to just remind ourselves who our provider is. It's God. There has to be order before it can multiply. And some of us just need to get some things in order to position our lives in a way that God can bring multiplication. Okay, here's the second thought we need to understand when it comes to this principle. So not only does there need to be order, but it has to be blessed before it can multiply. It has to be, you have to have order, and it has to be blessed. And the only way that it's blessed is if you give it to God first. Which is why many people don't see multiplication in their lives, because they don't give the first portion to God. So everything else, as we learned, the first portion has the ability to bless the remaining portion. And I've heard people say, I've tried that giving thing, didn't work for me. Did you give it first? Did you have enough faith to do it before anything else? Because if you're not giving it first, God can't act outside of himself again. You're expecting him to bless something that you haven't submitted to him. And the disciples come to him first in this story. And it has the ability to bless the remaining portion. And I know a lot of people that give a little here and give a little there. It just depends on the week. But they don't bring their first 10% to the house of God. And you can't expect God to bless your finances if you don't bring it to him first. It's a principle. He's the only one, by the way, that can bless and multiply your life. I mean, think about this. What if the disciples had given away the 2 fish and the loaves before Jesus had blessed it? Does it multiply? No. There's no way. So in the same way, you give a little here, you give a little there, don't bring it first to him, and you're expecting him to bless something that you haven't submitted to him. Now, I personally think that the disciples figured this thing out. There's a story in 2 Kings 4, somewhere around that area. Elisha actually feeds 100 men with 20 loaves. And of course, the disciples were very familiar with Scripture being passed down. They were familiar with this story. And I think they figured it out, and they realized, we're with someone bigger and better than Elisha, and I bet you he's going to one-up Elisha here, and he's going to feed not just 100 people, but 20,000 plus. I think once he blesses it, the thing's going to multiply. Now, that's not the way that it actually happened. But isn't that tendency within all of us? Isn't it the tendency with all of us to figure out in advance how God's going to provide for us? Like, when's he going to do it? Who is he going to use? I mean, every interaction we have, we're like, are you the person? Are you getting ready to slide something across the table to me? I mean, how are you going to do it, Lord? I mean, we want to find out in advance how God's going to provide for us. And we're usually wrong because he uses the most unlikely people. So what situation in your life right now are you facing that you don't know how God is going to provide? I personally think that the disciples had figured it out. It didn't happen, though, the way that they thought it was going to. And so you go back to Jesus. So the first miracle of all was that they got everyone to sit in groups of 50. I mean, that's the first miracle that happens here. They get them to sit in groups of 50. Now you've got to go back to Jesus. Okay, Lord, because now you figured out, he's going to do something. He's setting us up for something here. We've got them in groups of 50. You got them in groups? Yes, we do. Okay. Now you've got to be looking at the disciples. You're one of the disciples. You've got to be looking at Peter, James, and John. You've got to be looking at them going, get ready. Insta story, Facebook Live, get ready. Get ready. This is going to be awesome. So you give to Jesus one of the 4.5 rolls that are remaining. And this is where you have to see what happened. Luke chapter 9, verse 16. And he took the 5 loaves, the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and broke them. Now, think about this. You've gone to Jesus. You've given him one of your rolls. Bless it. It's going to be awesome. He breaks it into 2 pieces, blesses it, and then hands it back to you. Are you done praying? Maybe there's a second blessing. No, I'm through. Jesus wasn't feeling very Pentecostal that day, and he was just like, no, I'm done. Sure you don't want to bless it some more? No, go ahead, I blessed it. Jesus gives it back to them. Nothing has happened with it. You actually have less than what you gave to him. He broke it and gave it back to you and said, now go give it away. Which is where we learned the third principle. You not only need order, and it not only has to be blessed, but you have to give it away before it multiplies. You got to give it away. Look at verse 16. Look at the remainder of that verse now. Took it, blessed it, broke it, and then he gave it to them to set before the multitude. Gives half of the roll back to him. Says, you're going to have to give it away. Now, how many know that took faith? I mean, think about it. You walk up to your first group of 50 with half of what you gave him to bless. Take a small piece. Small piece. Small. I'm looking for small people here. Small piece. Small piece. Small piece. Right? Group of 50. Work out, and you get to the end of 50, and it multiplies in your hands. Here's what you need to understand. The miracle didn't happen in the hands of the master. The miracle happened in the hands of the disciples. It grew, it multiplied in their hands. Jesus blessed it. Now, yes, Jesus performed the miracle, but it required the faith of the disciples being willing to give it away that enacted the miracle. I mean, think about this. What if the disciples, even after Jesus had blessed it, ate it for themselves? It's blessed. I mean, what if Jesus blesses it, they take and go, thank you very much. You see, that's really the challenge. Many people have said, I've been tithing for years. Never experienced this abundant blessing thing you're talking about, this multiplication. Just a few questions. Are things in order? Did you give it first before anything else? And have you given above and beyond that portion? And instead, what a lot of us do is eat the blessed portion for ourselves. What's been blessed, we take for ourselves. And it had the potential to be multiplied. Think about how many miracles you could potentially be missing out on because of your unwillingness or because of your lack of faith to give away what Jesus has blessed. Which is why, and I understand it takes such great faith, it's why you have to make the choice to be a giver. And maybe some of you say, well, I do tithe. Now, I'm going to say something that will probably ruffle some feathers, and you're probably not, it's going to shock you if I haven't already ruffled your feathers, right? But I personally believe that tithing is not giving. I believe that tithing is returning because it already belongs to God. So tithing and giving are two different things. Yeah, let me maybe put it in a real life context, a story. Let's say your alternator goes out on your car and you're down and you need to be getting to work, and my day off is tomorrow, and I said, well, great, take my car and man, just keep it. We'll figure out what we need to do. Whenever you get your car back, you just let me know, we'll meet somewhere. And about 8 days later, you call me back and you go, hey, they just fixed my car, we need to meet up. And we meet over there in the parking lot, and we get out, and you say, man, you know what? Because I love you, I'd like to give you this car. I would say, you mean the car that I let you drive? I mean the car, my car. You want to give me my car? That's my car that you're giving. I own the car. Okay, listen to me. We try to give God what already belongs to him. I'd like to give you something, Lord. Really? Because that's actually, he's already been very clear, that's actually already mine. It belongs to me. I mean, how do you give something that doesn't belong to you in the first place? Now, giving more than that, above and beyond the tithe, is actually when you start giving. Now, when I realized that was a game changer for Ashley and I. When we realized, listen, tithing is like breathing. We do it first. That was another game changer for us. Before anything else, we do it first. And we just started to experience God's provision in our lives. And then we started to get challenged by the Holy Spirit to give above and beyond. Now, here were three questions that we asked. When the Holy Spirit started to work in us, and we wanted to start giving above and beyond, we started asking these questions. Well, how will I know when to give? How will I know where to give? And of course, here's the big one. How do I know how much to give? Okay, how many of those are good questions? We need to be asking when God starts working in our lives. We want to be responding to needs. And here's what we've realized. If we will listen, Jesus said, my sheep hear and know my voice. And if we will start to tune our ear, I promise you, he will start speaking to you. And it's in those moments when it was just, the Holy Spirit would say, hey, listen, Devin, I'll tell you when to give, I'll tell you where to give, and I'll tell you how much. You just listen for my voice and be obedient when I tell you to do it. Now, in case you forgot, here's the way the story ends. Verse 17 now, Luke chapter 9. They all ate, I love this, and were satisfied. So it wasn't like they were like, I really could go for a second helping. They were all satisfied, and the disciples picked 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. All four Gospels make note that there were 12 basketfuls left over. Just a couple of reasons, I believe, for that. The region where this was happening was known as the region of 12. So I think this spoke directly to their context and to their culture. It had an even deeper meaning to them. But one of the reasons I think there were 12 is because then every disciple had a basket full. Now, why do you think Jesus would want each disciple to have a basket of their own? Maybe Jesus was trying to say, go find some more hungry people. Maybe it actually wasn't for them. Listen, Jesus wants to multiply your life. Now, there has to be order. And some of us maybe need to work on that. And we need to start giving it first. And maybe some of us are challenged in that area. And then you start giving above and beyond. And that's where that starts to happen. Jesus wants to fill your basket too. Not just for your own benefit, but because there are other hungry, empty people wanting to be filled. People wanting to connect with God and have a relationship with Jesus. People wanting to connect to other people and experience real community and find a place where they belong and have healing and wholeness in their lives. And people that want to experience understanding their purpose so that they can make a difference in this world, where they can help others to find hope and freedom. And they understand the potential that's in them isn't just for them. It's for others. Jesus wants to do that in your life. Don't ever forget, the blessing isn't for your benefit. Here's the word that I've been thinking about. I've been studying this past week. Here's the word that keeps coming to mind. It's the word legacy. Legacy. I very simply define legacy as this: what people remember once you're gone. It's a simple definition. What people will remember about you. What do you want people to remember about you? Because I have a lot of people tell me what they want people to remember about them, but their life and how they live their life doesn't align with what they want people to remember about them. What do you want people to remember about you? I mean, people are going to say something about you anyway. Let me say it this way. You're leaving a legacy whether you realize it or not. And a legacy is not just how you spent your money, it's how you spend your life. What will people remember about you? I want my legacy to be something my kids are proud of. That Dad didn't just give his life to building his own kingdom. That Dad gave himself to something that mattered, something that was bigger than him, something that was way beyond him. Something that really didn't even depend upon him. That's what I want my kids, my grandkids someday to look back and say, Dad left a legacy. Here's the verse that comes to mind. Psalm chapter 112, verse 5 and 6. Good will come to those who are generous. Now, this isn't just talking about your finances. This is actually talking about the life that you live. It's a generous life. The words you speak, the time you take with people. You're just generous. You don't make people feel like you have a shortage of time for them. You're generous. And you lend freely. And who have order. They conduct their affairs with justice. Surely the righteous will never be shaken. Now, it's going to be hard for some of you to believe. But you can live in shaking times and not be shaken. And some of you, listen, your ability to leave a legacy is determined by whether or not you are shaken during shaking times. Surely the righteous that are generous and have some things in order, they're not shaken, and they'll have a legacy. Next weekend, we've talked about it for the last 4 weeks here. We have what we call our Heart for the House offering, and all of that offering goes towards the acceleration of the vision that God's given us, that we try to steward as best we can, where we all together go above and beyond. Now, if you know me, if you've been around the Connect culture for any length of time, you know that I just don't do it, high pressure, high emotional, compulsive, guilt-driven giving. That's why we don't do an offering talk here every week. So now I have to have the pressure to convince you to give every week, and you determine whether or not you're giving based upon how good the offering talk was. No. We have changed hearts, and when we allow God to change our hearts, giving's easy. So I like it to be planned because I think that's the way God designed it. That's why I've been talking about it for 4 weeks. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 7. It says this. So let each one give thoughtfully, and here's what it says. If you can't see it, it says with purpose. With purpose. Just as he has decided in his heart. not grudgingly or under compulsion, but God is actually worried and more concerned about the spirit behind the gift, a cheerful giver. The person whose heart is in the gift, it says. So I just always like to give people time to think about it, to pray about it. I mean, if you know anything about our church, we actually have a team here called the Legacy Team. And it's people that have self-identified as having the gift of giving by both desire and capacity. And so they're constantly looking for opportunities. What can we give to? What's going on? And so we just share opportunities all the time. We just share all the details and where everything's going, where everything's being spent, and they just see opportunities to give to. And I think here's the cool thing. Whether or not we take this offering next week or not, we're still going to give over $100,000 away this year. Like, whether that happens or not, not even a dime given, we're still going to give over $100,000 to benevolence and to needs and to missions and to outreach. That's awesome, everyone. It's awesome. It's incredible. In fact, this past week, we had the opportunity to be at Riverbend, and we provided Thanksgiving dinner for 350 inmates this past week. And here's what's really cool. They were each allowed to invite 2 guests to join them for Thanksgiving dinner. We had a gentleman come up to us at the end of our time there, and he said, "This is the first time in 24 years that I've had Thanksgiving dinner with my family." You did that. You did that. I didn't do that. Myself, along with 7 connectors, we were down there at Riverbend. Guys, it was so awesome to be with you, to hear your stories, to hear you be thankful and grateful. It was convicting. To hear them talk of God's goodness in their life and his salvation and his redemption. And we had barbecue for Thanksgiving, everybody. It was awesome. Pecan pie. And I had someone say, it's pecan, not pecan. I had someone correct me. And it was awesome. Now, the reason we were able to respond to that opportunity is because we function with, here's a word for you that you need to learn, we function with margin. Okay, that's not butter. Margin. Margin. In fact, originally there was another church that had committed to underwriting that project, and they backed out at the last minute. And Reverend Darnell, the chaplain of the prison, called me. And before he even got done, I went, "Oh, just stop right there. Yes. Yes. The answer is yes. And because of your generosity, and because we have order, margin, we could respond to the need." I mean, right now as a church, we're operating on 62% of what you give. Okay. That's called order. It's called order. You know, why do we do that? Why do we do that? So that we can be generous and respond to need and be positioned to make financial decisions, not out of pressure, but out of the sheer delight and joy that we get to do to be generous. It's so fun. And of course, you know about the property we're in due diligence on. We showed that to you a couple weeks ago. By the way, we're literally 1 signature away from the county level of being able to close on that and just moving forward with that. So that's really cool. That's really kind of fun. Yeah. But I mean, you've heard me say this before. We will only go at the pace of your generosity. We will never get ahead of your generosity. And there will always be more vision than resource. You think that first property is the first one? Hold on. I mean, there will always be more vision than resource. I mean, so I want you to give thought and pray and decide in your heart what God would have you do. And just make the choice to be a giver. Choose to invest in something bigger than you. Listen, it's not about equal giving. It's about equal sacrifice. It's not about us all giving the same amount. It's about us all having the right attitude behind the amount. So next week, when we give above and beyond because our heart's in the kingdom, let's tangibly show God that he's first in our lives so that other people will have the opportunity to make him first in theirs. Let's do that together. And I know, man, if you're not a tither, we are way out there now. I know. But I want you to start tithing because I know what God will do in your life if you do. And listen, if you ever start truly tithing, giving becomes easy. Talking about tithing, returning to God what already belongs to him, and giving, which is above and beyond. You know you can't outgive God. You can't do it. I've tried. One of the greatest things you'll ever experience is when God gives you an opportunity to give extravagantly. You know what, Ashley and I, every time resource comes into our lives, every time. Of course, we tithe immediately and this goes. Every time we ask God this question, what do you want us to do with the rest? It's all yours. What do you want us to do? Because, theme verse of this whole series, Proverbs 11, the world of the generous, it gets bigger. The world of the stingy, it gets smaller and smaller. And the one, you want to live the blessed life? The one who blesses others is abundantly blessed, and those who help others. Now the version says, those that refresh others will themselves be refreshed. And giving becomes an overflow, an expression of gratitude, and it's the most fun way to live. But listen, there has to be order. Some of us need to get some order. And you got to give it first. First, it's his. You can't give something that doesn't belong to you. It's already his. And you got to start giving above and beyond. And it's there. I promise you it's there. That the blessed life is something you will experience. How many want to live the blessed life? I know you do. Amen. Amen. Amen.